What's up, YouTube? It's artisanmc, and since the PMDM stream I was trying to do would not have a clear connection or audio, I decided to just record it on my phone. So if it's choppy from here, it's basically the phone, and I have to get a new phone. There's no other excuses on this shit. So the whole idea of this was the psychology of a mad black male. And it comes out of the conversation I had last night with my boy, Joe Thompson, better known as JT, from Fracture Comics. And I was informing him about some of the recent events that happened in the comic shop, but also about just work in general and things that were going on with work in general. And I say that while I'm at work, driving to my old job to pick up some pieces. So it's kind of funny, right? It's kind of funny. But sitting here listening to the stuff telling him about the stuff that I've been through on the job site with different races of, different ethnicities of people, and him telling me on his side the stuff that he's been through on his jobs with different ethnicities of people. Joe is about almost 10, 15 years behind me in age, right? He's in his 30s. So a lot of the frustration that he's having now, and he's getting to points where he just doesn't care, is where I've already been. So it's kind of funny in a way to see him getting to these same points that I got to. And one of the things that spun out of our conversation last night is I told him that I'm not the same person I was before like 2018. And that personally, in relationships, I wasn't the same person I was after 2013. I wasn't the same person that I was before 2013. And understanding that you hit these milestones at different points in your life when you go through some serious shit, right? And just in our work experience, that these are the things that have shaped and molded and changed us to being the person that we are. Now, while both of us are good workers in a sense that we do our jobs, we try to be very good at our jobs and whatnot and deal with the people that we deal with, most of it, a lot of the time, comes into having to second guess, change yourself, play the gamesmanship stuff about how other people try to fuck you over on your job as a black male. That it does not stop. It doesn't matter where you go. Somebody is always trying to get you out of your position or label you something you are not, so you cannot rise higher than the position you come in as. And it basically comes down to a lot of psychological warfare that goes on with a black male in a work situation, especially if there's women in that situation. Especially if there's women in that situation. It's like, if there's women involved in a situation in your work environment, bar none, you get me. You get me. If it's black women, best believe you're going to lose your job. Now, some of the situations that we remark to each other about, that he's heard me bitch about and he's bitched about and told me, to be fair, I'm knowing it from the side of working with black people, Caucasian people, Latinos, right? Predominantly, right? He knows it from the other side of dealing with black people, Caucasian people, and Asian people, predominantly, because he's from Frisco, right? So sitting there telling stories to each other and sharing notes, you come across understanding why black men come into a space, a work situation, where it seems like they have an attitude. And it's not an attitude because they just came there and they wanted to be upset or anything like that. It's like you always have your freaking guard up, and you get so jaded that you don't want to do shit else but what you have to at one point. At one point or another, you don't want to have to do shit else. And for me, in a psychological sense, listening to Joe tell his story, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing basically the psychological breakdown, not in a bad way, but the breaking of a man and harden him into a stone to where he's not coming in with this jovial, happy-go-lucky attitude that things will just work out and everything will be okay. You know, that no, this is combat warfare, and these people are going to try to fuck me over the first chance they get. So all the mental hoops and chutes and ladders that we have to actually go through to understand and protect ourselves against puts you in a state of basically stress the whole time that you're at work. And that is not a relaxing time to just be at work and just doing your job. It doesn't matter. And I remember telling him the story that I was relaying to my mother when I really had to sit down and have a conversation with her about what it means to be a black man in the workplace as opposed to being a black woman in the workplace, because she's just thinking everything should just be the same, that it's all just the same. And I told her it is not the same. It is not. How you deal with a situation in a workplace is completely different and is taken completely differently than how a black man has to deal in the workplace in the same situation. Completely differently. And one of the things that I told her, and that I hit on with Joe, is that the first thing that happens in a workplace when somebody starts, messing with you in some kind of sense, like with your time or don't want to have to listen to you, is that the first thing they want to label you is having an attitude. That your attitude is automatically it. Is that, oh, well, he just has an attitude. And usually that's enough for a lot of people. That black male that's labeled as having an attitude is automatically put on that list that we're probably going to have to get rid of him. Because innately, people are afraid of black men being angry. They're afraid of black men anyway. But the rest of that social conditioning goes in that if black men are angry, you're in danger. That's the next part. It automatically goes in there. You don't have to go a day without seeing that. That's why the only acceptable form of a black male for people nowadays is an effeminate black male. That he can have a job for a long time. And nobody will worry about him. They kind of think it's funny when he gets angry and snaps off on women because he's just acting like a female. It's kind of a caricature. It's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But the idea of a black man actually being upset somewhere or just a little bit perturbed throws people into a fucking panic to where we got to get him out of here. This is going to be a problem. He's going to come back and shoot up the place. When traditionally none of us do that shit. None of us do. It's always the Caucasian guys that do that. Right? So it ends up being funny. The second part goes into tone. Along with, oh, he just has an attitude, always comes back to your tone. And this is more that tone policing that happens with men in general, but it feeds into the same thing with black males, where people are inherently afraid of black men being angry. And then your tone is always the thing that they want to attack. Because black men, for the most part, do not talk in a effeminate, soft, or weak tone. They talk very masculine. They will have a lot of resonance, a lot of bass in their voice when they talk, because that's just naturally how they are. And that makes people scared. They are scared of that. Now, you can see it in this space all the time, that you hear black men with very rich, deep sounding voices. You have to go no farther than James Earl Jones or Albert Wright, or I think that's his name, the voice of the Watcher. Any black man you can name in cinema has a distinct fucking voice. You know it right off the bat. Keith David is another one that comes to mind. The voice of Spawn and Goliath and the Air Force and a whole bunch of other stuff. We have very distinct, deep, rich voices. People, particularly Caucasians, get intimidated by that. That is intimidating, especially if they feel some kind of way insecure about it when it's directed towards them. That's the first thing to jump on. Oh, he has an attitude, and if the attitude doesn't work, well, it was his tone. To still get back to well, I felt some kind of way about how he addressed me. And usually what it is that we address people with no fear of them. And that's what bothers them. We didn't lower ourselves and talk in a way that made them feel comfortable, which is traditionally shown to be in an effeminate way. They're totally fine with the effeminate way, but they're not fine with the masculine sound of a black man, which is most of the damn time. They're not fine with that. But in today's culture, they're totally fine with you sounding like, a little girl. But they're not fine with you sounding like a masculine man that's not about to take any crap off of people. And you don't even have to raise your voice to get that. That's just off top, right? The third thing is that they're always worried that you're going to take their women. And I made a joke about this with JT last night, that I wasn't born at the birth of a nation, so this should not apply to me. But this scenario constantly plays itself out, because if there are women in the workplace where you are, even if it's one, everyone else there, even if you're the only black guy there, everyone else is worried about you sleeping with this woman and will enact their own attitudes like they need to protect her from you. Because the stereotype out there is that anything with a hole in it that's moving, a black man is going to run up and throw his penis inside of it. That's freaking stupid. It's stupid, right? It's just stupid. And the scenario that JT related to me was him trying to get a job at a consulate, a Japanese consulate, and being very professionally dressed, and he knows a lot about the culture and everything like that. And although the person who got him the lead-in gig was a friend of his, the person that's in charge of this was a pretty traditional Japanese man who didn't really speak that much English. So when JT's friend left to go get some copies or something like that, or some paperwork, and JT was just sitting there with the older Japanese man, the questions he asked him was some out-of-the-line ass questions for an interview. And one of which is, have you worked around Japanese people before? And JT is relating to me how he's taking this conversation like it shows that he's not paying attention to me at all. He didn't even read my resume that's sitting right in front of him that shows all these Japanese places he's actually worked. He didn't even look at it, right? The next question was, are you married? He's kind of put off by that because it's not a normal interview question, but okay, he's on Japanese consulate territory, so basically he's in Japan right now. He got to deal with them, right, on their terms. So he answered the question. My response to it was like, you should have just showed him your hand. It's like, well, I don't have a ring on my finger, so obviously I'm not married, but I don't see how that relates to the job, right? The next question, and that was more of a comment that the man made to him, the interviewer made to him, was about him being a ladies' man, and was he good with the ladies? And I just broke out laughing because I said, how fucking ridiculous is that? That's not any of your business. But what it shows is the mentality of that interviewer, that he is worried about the women in the office. That he's looking at my boy JT, who's a tall, like 6 foot tall, slender black male, well dressed or whatever, talking articulate, in there for a job interview. He's worried about that this dude is in here on some, I guess, sexual exploration, trying to bag him some Japanese women or something like that. So it is now this man's job to be the protector of their virtue and keep them from falling into the clutches of the dreaded black man and falling under the sway of the black male magic wand. It's so fucking ridiculous, right? But I related to him, even though as funny as that is and messed up as it is, that my boy JT didn't get that job. He didn't. For no real reason, he didn't get that job. But that was probably it, right? It bothered. I related to him a story Similar to me, but in the opposite direction, to where I had people working against me on a job at my old job because there were two chicks there that I wasn't interested in. I believe my work is my work and I don't shit where I eat. And although this one girl in this place was cute, I wasn't interested in her. She flirted with everybody. Everybody paid her special attention and all the rest of that. But I didn't. I wasn't interested. She took that shit personal. And so when my district manager didn't like me because I wasn't the ignorant black dude he could relate to, I didn't like LeBron James, I didn't wear J's, I didn't root for the 49ers or none of that shit, he took issue with that, and he found people to help him try to mess with me and create that environment that was always a complaint. Even though 5 years before that time, I never had any complaints whatsoever. None. I was a great worker. I got recommendations and awards regularly until he took charge. Then that shit stopped, right? Now it's just complaints, and it's always from the same source. Now, the funny part on that is that the person that gave him more help was a person he brought over from another store to be on this team with this other girl. And of course, this was a sister. And this was a single mother sister. And I was paying her no mind. And she didn't like that. She wanted some special dispensation for her that I, as a supervisor, needed to come up and introduce myself to her and praise her and all the rest of that. So since that's what the district manager thought should be happening, he made me have to do that with her. And that's what she wanted. And when I finally did that with her, the chick got the biggest smile. You would have thought her panties fell off and it like a wet washcloth. You could have heard it, because that's all it was. She wanted me to pay her some attention, like she was something other than another worker on the staff. And I wouldn't do that. So the manager made me do it. I'm like, oh my God. But between the two of these chicks, that's what it was. Their complaints, their lack of wanting to perform up to standards or anything like that was because, number one, they didn't like my attitude. And my attitude was I wasn't kissing their ass. I was being their supervisor. Second part was they didn't like my tone because I talk with authority. I am the one in charge. This is what you should be doing. I'm not kissing your ass. And the third part was I wasn't interested in them. I wouldn't flirt with them. I wouldn't do none of that. It was all business. And they didn't like that either. So what do you think fucking happened? They became the instruments for this guy who doesn't like me to work through to keep messing around with me until I was finally out of the company. That's all it was. It's all bullshit. But knowing the amount of games I went through and had to deal with, when I walked away from that job, I wasn't upset. I was upset that he fucked up my 5-year plan. But it was a weight off of my mind and my head, because then I could actually have some peace. I didn't have to deal with his shit. I didn't have to deal with them. That was the first and only job I've ever been on where I got write-ups for doing things innovative and correct. If I did something that made the work go easier and showed a little bit of initiative, I got written up for that shit. This is the only job I've ever got written up for showing initiative. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. This is ridiculous. But how the guy wrote it up, well, he didn't follow orders. He did stuff outside the scope. By making a spreadsheet. That's all. By making a spreadsheet and keeping an accurate count, I was doing things outside of scope. So he wrote me up for that. This is the kind of shit that black males get that will keep us underemployed, and when we are employed, not getting the pay that we deserve. The last part that I mentioned, that JT, just because I'm at where I need to be, but the last part we talked about was how much we make. And basically, me and JT are making similar money right now, right? And he lives in Frisco, so it ain't going as far. But compared to his friends, some of his friends that he have that are, software engineers, they don't understand how he's living on the money that he has. They don't understand that shit. Because some of them have concepts like a funployment. And I had never heard that term. And he said, you probably never heard of that shit before, have you? And I said, no, I've never heard of that shit. Basically, it's somebody who works in his age group, that's 30, that chose to be out of work. And they're just not having to do shit. Because they made so much money doing nothing already. They made a shitload of money doing absolutely nothing. Pretty much. And so now they're just deciding to be unemployed and have fun on their unemployment. They ain't looking for a job. They don't want one. They just sitting back on the money that they made. And call it funployment. Like, fun employment. I'm like, get the hell out of here. I've never heard that before. But it shows you that black men in some senses are limited to the amount of money they make, and they get so many people around them and above them to keep them blocked in and limited at a space. My old job, I got the same shit. When I was going really hard and really trying to get this program up and running that they gave me, and I'm spending more hours and time doing it, I got talked to by my district manager because he told me I was making more than some of the other people. So he capped my hours. He capped my hours. Nobody else's time was capped in that district, but he capped my hours. He didn't want me making more money, specifically. That goes into the idea of like, oh, you're making more than any other supervisor. Well, I'm in the busiest store than any other supervisor. I have the biggest earning store, and it's the hardest one to work in. And I'm doing it, and I'm making these numbers. Some of this takes some time. I'm on a new program and innovating that program so it actually works for everybody throughout the company. But you're capping my hours because, you're making too much. That's the shit that black males deal with. Black women don't get that same kind of shit. If they do, it's usually from white women, and they can fuck around and deal with that. If it's from white men, they can end up giving up some pussy or something like that, or the promise of, and they'll be okay. But black men, there's not that option. You have to go and you have to make less money. And it's always low-key shit like that. Always low-key shit. It's never an upfront fight about something that you're actually negatively done. You can be doing everything right. And as I told my mother in the conversation about black men working, I have never been the shittiest worker or the mid-grade worker at any job I've ever had. And I've always had to leave them. Always had to. Not because I was the dumbest, not because I did the work the least, not because I showed up to work the least, none of that shit. I've always been the best worker and still the first one let go. Why? Because people are threatened by black men's tone and their ability. And when they meet a black man that is a threat to them in that sense, like, damn, this motherfucker got something on the ball. I don't know how to relate to him because he's not the stereotype. Those are the first ones that usually get cut down. And that's no different than being in slavery when they killed the smart Negroes. If you had a little bit of brains, a little bit of backbone, they tried to break you. They tried to break you or kill you in front of everybody else so they didn't have another one of you to deal with. That's all that happens. It's Dr. T. Hassan has talked about it before, but it's modern day buck breaking. And this happens with men who are actually not on that spectrum of going to jail or whatever, have college educations, try to work in these corporations and provide for themselves. And this is the kind of shit that they deal with. From women, from men, from idiots, from people who fail upwards, just to keep them repressed into a lower status because they feel intimidated that they could overtake them or they could overpower them in some kind of way. So they purposely do things to depower and keep them at a lower status in life. And that's the message. The psychology of a mad black man is because of what we deal with in the workplace and in the world all the time. If you see a black man even a young black man who has that scowl on his face, and you don't think there's a reason for it, you should probably sit your ass down and talk to him for a little bit about what he deals with on a regular basis, and you will find out a lot. All the things that black men usually have to deal with is a lot of psychological warfare shit that we have to actually internalize, understand, and try to mitigate just to go through our daily freaking life. Daily life. Perfect example right now, and I'll end on this. When I go in this store right now and I have this company card, there will be somebody who will look at me sideways and try to triple verify the fact that I have this company credit card. Bet money. Bet money. Not because we've never used it here, but because me as a black person have never been the one to come in here and use it at this place. Now they'll have some issue, even though I'm decked out in all my company gear. I'll leave you with that. Right. Like, share, subscribe, support the stream if you feel so inclined. I've been artisanmc, and this is my philosophy on why black men can be and have a right to be so mad. Peace.